Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I'm going to be talking about building a relationship with Allah. This particular topic is an attempt to tie up what we've discussed so far. Losing my religion, which is what we started with, the idea of trying to still understand one's religion even though one may have questions. Deep questions about faith, about belief, managing the ego, and the other topics. We will look at our origin and our destination. That's a concept that will keep coming up from time to time. Where did we come from and where are we going? And how to stay on course. We will look at, once again, we'll revisit the story of our creation. At the point of our creation, the creation of the first person, the first man, what happened? And we'll look at three things: Adam's wish, the promise of Iblis, and Allah's declaration. We'll also look at the concept of vicegerency from the Islamic viewpoint. We will look at the concept of Iman and Amal, and how these two things are strongly connected, and how they can be translated into having taqwa and into our actions. Then we'll look at some ways in which we can build our spiritual immune system. Ways of building our spiritual immune system, which is what will help us stay on track, such that at the end, at the beginning of the end, or the end of the beginning, depending on which way you want to look at it, we'll be pleased with Allah, Allah will be pleased with us. And we will go back to where we came from, and everything will be all right, inshallah. To start with, why do we need to build our spiritual immune system? Why do we need to build a relationship with Allah? There's an existing one, but we sometimes forget. Some of us are not aware that there is an existing relationship. We may actually say it with our mouths, but we don't let it affect our actions. We distance our actions from our belief. So we will then look at the very beginning. I know many of us are familiar with the overview of how we were created, the story of the creation, what happened, and so on. So I will look more at the highlights, the main things that are important. First, Adam's wish. Now, or let me take it from the promise of Iblis before we go on to the wish of Adam. I mentioned it yesterday, that after Iblis had refused to bow down to Adam, and Allah sent him out of the garden, said, from now on you are rejected, you are accursed, he then made a promise that Adam, for whose sake he had been cast out, he would ensure that Adam and his descendants, meaning us, will also go astray. There's a saying that misery loves company. It's true about Iblis. He didn't want to go down alone. Like, okay, I agree, I'll go down, but I won't go alone. I'll take Adam and his descendants with me. There's a verse of the Qur'an where it said that Iblis even said he will attack us from before us and behind us. From every angle, he will attack us. Until Allah will not find one person amongst human beings who is grateful. That was his promise. And no matter what the faults of Iblis may be, arrogance and so on, he has one virtue. He keeps his word. Now, when he said that, Allah then made a declaration that Iblis can try, he should go ahead and try. Whoever follows him, Allah said, he will fill hell with all of them. But he will send down guidance, and whoever follows that guidance will not go astray. So there are some people that will qualify as untouchables to Iblis. And we are trying to ensure, to remind ourselves, to look at ways in which we can qualify and become one of the untouchables to Iblis. Adam's wish. There is a wish we all have. Steve Jobs mentioned it. We've had both Muslim scholars and non-Muslim speakers talk about it. It's the wish to not die. the wish to live forever. There's a very popular joke where it said that someone once asked, how many of you want to go to heaven? Hands flew up. How many of you want to die? Hands flew down. And so it's a question of how do you get there? That wish is natural. We know it's natural because it was a wish that was in Adam right from the time he was created. That was the one way Iblis got to him. Even though Adam had been told, Iblis is your enemy. All Iblis had to tell him was, you have to eat that tree. The only reason why Allah doesn't want you to eat from that tree is He doesn't want you to become like the angels or to live forever. And that was the selling point. Wow, we'll be like the angels? We'll live forever? And Adam and Hawa went ahead and ate from the tree. For a moment, they forgot their destination. They got lost in their everyday pleasure, their everyday happiness, and they were thinking only of, wow, when we get there, we will live forever. That wish is still in us. We all want to live forever. But we know we have to live forever in the right way, not in a wrong way. Our return, our final goal is to Allah. Our return is to Allah. He says it over and over and over in the Qur'an. There are just a few verses there, but continuously you would see this same thing coming up. We are returning to Him, we are going back to Him. Sometimes He would say, these things we argue about, don't argue about them. You will come back to me, I will tell you the meaning of all this. I will resolve your arguments. Which is a good point to remember when you get into some theological arguments with your fellow Muslims even. Is this haram? Is that halal? And you want to come to blows. Why come to blows? Discuss, understand each other's viewpoint. Remember, at the end of the day, you will go back to Allah. He will resolve all the quarrel. Our return is to Him. And He said, the successful ones will be those who come back to Him with a sound heart. A sound heart. Your heart is still in place. It's the way it should be. Not necessarily a perfect heart, just a sound one. It's strong. It's done the right things. So we need to keep sharpening our conscience because that is what helps us stay on track. We need to keep listening to the voice inside of us and hear what is this voice saying to us and tailor what words come up from within us. It's important for keeping our hearts alive. You don't want to go back to Allah with a dead heart. You want a sound one, not an ailing one. Allah sometimes describes some people as people in whose hearts there is a disease. We don't want to go back with diseased hearts. So much later on, we'll look at what are the things we can do to try and cure our hearts of diseases. One of the diseases was mentioned yesterday, the ego. And there are many others. Right now, as you are sitting down, you can think about them, you can talk about them. So let's throw it out. What diseases can you remember just sitting down? Envy, hatred, arrogance, anger, excessive anger, anger out of control. What else? Vengeance, seeking vengeance. Anything else? Greed. Anything else? Hatred. Anything else? Selfishness, miserliness, inability to tell the truth, a refusal to see the truth. Okay? I'll tell a story. The king and his successors. There was a king who felt his time was drawing near. He needed to pick a successor. He had no child of his own. So he decided that he would test the people of the town. But he didn't tell them it was a test. What he did was to ask for all the young men in the town to come to the palace. And he gave each person a seed. Said, plant it, water it, care for it. And then he gave them a certain time frame. By so and so time, I want you to all come back here, show me your plants. Show me your plants. Well, make sure you take care of this plant. Everybody went back home with their seeds and they planted them. Now there was this boy who, after planting his seed, watering it, the seed would not germinate. Loved it, watered the soil, the seed just would not germinate. Day after day, he kept hoping the seed wouldn't germinate, so he felt he had done something wrong. And he was really worried. It meant he would go back to the king with an empty pot, no plant. Whereas everybody had plants that were flourishing. When it was close to the time for all of them to go back to the king, his mother suggested to him, listen, just go uproot one thing and take it there. You can't go back with an empty pot. He said, I can't do that. My seed did not germinate. That's it. It didn't. He was very sad. It meant definitely he was not going to even be considered as the king's successor. When they went before the king and everybody had these nice, wonderful plants, shiny green leaves, plants just happy, and he had the empty pot. Everyone was presenting their plants, this is mine and that is mine, and he came forward with this empty pot. That was when the king said that he would pick this boy with the empty pot as his successor. Everybody, including the boy, was surprised, like, why? His didn't even germinate, let alone grow well. And the king said, I gave each one of you an infertile seed, a dead seed. There is no way your seeds could have germinated. No way your seeds could have germinated. The seeds were never meant to germinate. The test was not the test of who is a good gardener. It was a test of integrity, a test of what was in the hearts of people. So our test in life is not a test to flourish and germinate by our terms. Because to us, what is flourishing may actually not be flourishing in the eyes of Allah. Our test is of what's in our hearts. So sometimes you see someone who lived his entire life, he didn't invent anything, he never made much money, his life was simple. Maybe he struggled, he worked hard, he did a lot of things, hoping to make a lot of money, he didn't. Maybe he had a dream, he would set up this big company or that business, or he would reach this level, and he never did. And when we talk about people like that, we say that's such a sad story. But that's by our estimation. What's in the person's heart, that's what's important. There's a hadith where the Prophet ﷺ once said, one of the best kind of people, and he then gave some qualities that each time I read the hadith, I wonder at it. He said the kind of person who, when he's absent, people don't notice. He didn't do anything outstanding. This person is quiet. And I think the lesson in that hadith is that loud noise doesn't always mean somebody has got it right. What's in the heart is what's important. Going back to Allah with a sound heart, not a sound business, not a sound account, not perfect children. There are many prophets whose children were far from perfect. Nuh alayhi salam, his children would not get on the ark, the boat with him. Leave us here, we'll be fine. One said, I'll just climb one mountain and cling to it. We'll be fine. You go on in your boat. We have many prophets. Yaqub, the father of Yusuf, according to the narration, had 12 children. Only 2 were okay. The other 10 were criminals. Tried to kill their brother. One had the heart to say, don't kill him, just destroy him a little bit. But they were bad. What you would call bad boys, bad men, bad. So going back to Allah with a sound heart is what's most important. Allah said when he was talking to the angels, he didn't just say, I'll create a human being, put him on earth. He described us as vicegerents. I will create a vicegerent on earth. 2 things. Earth is where we were meant to be from the beginning. Shaitan didn't bring us here. We'd have gotten here anyway. But more importantly from this verse is the fact that Allah describes us as vicegerent. Khalifa in Arabic. Some people translate it as vicegerent, some as successor. Can't remember the third interpretation I sometimes find. But I like the word vicegerent because when you look it up in the dictionary, it means someone who represents a king or a ruler. A representative. You're not taking over, you're just representing. So each person that is born is a representative of Allah. To us, It would mean reflecting Allah's attributes and will. If you say, how do you represent? How do you represent a ruler? First, you find out what the ruler wants you to do. Then you try and do it to the best of your ability. When I was discussing this concept with some of my students, and I was asking, how do you represent Allah? One girl said, I don't think we can. When I talked to some of the boys, some also said, I don't think we can represent Allah. Like, how can you? He's too great to be represented by a human being. But when we talked some more, one boy then said, representing Allah means you represent His attributes. If He's kind, you try to be kind. He's merciful, you try to be merciful. It was one of the best explanations I have ever seen of what it means to represent Allah, to be a true vicegerent. Representation can be done first through our state of mind, then through our actions. The mind, having taqwa. Taqwa sometimes is interpreted as fear of Allah, sometimes as piety, sometimes as consciousness or awareness or mindfulness. I use consciousness and mindfulness because it helps me explain better what I'm trying to say. That if one has taqwa, if one is conscious of Allah, then that's what actually helps one do the right thing. Because you are conscious of Him, you are not ignorant of Him, you are not forgetting Him, you are not putting Him to one side. You are conscious of Him. Be taqwa inspired. Be taqwa inspired. We are inspired by many things. One of the best things that should inspire us to action, to deeds, to thoughts is taqwa. Because it gives us a stronger sense of what is right and what is wrong. It gives us a stronger sense of what is right and what is wrong. I don't say stronger knowledge. We sometimes know something is right, but we are not sensitive to rightness or wrongness. We may know, but we are not sensitive. But a person who is taqwa inspired is more sensitive to what is right and what is wrong. Okay, that picture is not showing too clearly, but I will explain what the picture was meant to show. In secondary school, in a biology class, we were taught about plants and sunlight, and how sunlight is essential for plants to grow. And they then said that one way of knowing this clearly, of observing it, is that if a plant is growing in a place where sunlight falls only from one direction, the plant always leans towards the sun. It will always lean away from where there is darkness towards the light. We were taught in biology class, I heard the theory and it sounded correct to me. But I didn't see it in practice until the day when I tried to grow a few plants in a pot in my boarding school in the hostel and placed it on my locker. Now my bed was right inside the corner, and across the room was the window. After a while, as the plants began to grow, it was one day it just struck me that they were all leaning towards the window, away from the corner towards the light. If you remember pictures, you've seen live pictures of coconut trees growing on the beach side. There are some pictures you will see the coconut trees really leaning almost towards the ground, leaning away from taller trees that are creating shade, which you would think is good, but towards the light. So being taqwa inspired, one analogy you used to remember is like Allah is the sun, He's the light, and a taqwa inspired person always leans towards Him, always leans towards the light. When you're taqwa inspired, all your actions are based on taqwa. Taqwa purifies the action. Right from the intention, you do it first, fi sabilillah. Then the manner in which you would do it, you would still think about Allah at that moment. Is this the best way to do this good deed? And even the outcome, whether or not it's what you expected or what you didn't expect, you would still believe this is good for me because you started it out right and you went about it the right way. We'll take a simple example like generosity. Many of us would want to be generous. We actually make attempts to be generous. We give things to people. They say do sadaqah, we do sadaqah. But how many times, think about it, you do sadaqah with that thing which is so used, it's no longer useful? How many times? We are going to give sadaqah, but we always give only that which is so used, it can no longer be useful. Whereas Allah encourages us to give of that which we love. That's a real test. I haven't really passed it, but I'm talking about it anyway. It's a reminder for all of us to give of that which you love. He also tells us in the Qur'an, don't give in such a way that the giving itself becomes an insult. Where you give in a way that it's condescending, that the person to whom you are giving actually feels insulted. In one verse, he says, don't give that which even if you were given, you would not take it except with your eyes closed. It's a reminder, but sometimes we give as though we are doing this person a huge favor. We are the ones who are trying to purify our hearts. So how are we actually doing this person a favor? What we are giving sometimes is material. It may be food. The person eats it in the evening of one day. If they are the kind of people that visit the White Office every morning, by the following morning, it's gone. But you are the one who gets the reward that lasts forever. So why would one give as though one were doing this person a favor? A taqwa-inspired person will not just say, my intention is good, but will also say, what's the best way to carry out this intention? What's the best way to do this thing? If I'm going to correct someone, fi sabilillah. By the way, fi sabilillah, in the way of Allah, in the way that Allah would want you to do it. Not just because Allah would want you to, but in the way that He would want you to do it. So if you're going to correct someone, fi sabilillah, with pure intention, I just want this person to do better or get better, the next question you have to ask is, what's the best way to go about it? If you're taqwa inspired, you care about not just the intention and the action, but the manner of carrying out the action. If someone is taqwa inspired, your motivation is always from within you. You're always self-motivated. Because you're taqwa inspired. Your motivation comes from Allah. Allah is unchanging, He's permanent. So your motivation doesn't usually shift. If you're motivated by what people will say, have you ever seen a plastic bag flapping in the wind? Plastic bag flapping in the wind. Does it flap in one direction or two? How many directions? Many. You can't even monitor it. You just go pa 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 like that. If you are inspired by people, what people would say, you'll be like a plastic bag in the wind. You won't be fixed. It will be in every direction. It would be like the needle on a compass gone crazy. Because you will keep changing direction. North, south, east, west. People say this, okay, that's what I should do. People say that, okay, I shouldn't do that, I should do this. Because everybody would always have their direction, their goals, their thoughts. A taqwa-inspired person has motivation from within. Allah is unchanging, therefore their motivation doesn't shift easily. A taqwa-inspired person does a lot of introspection, thinks a lot about himself. Even as you might be thinking, this person is sometimes so rude. If you're taqwa-inspired, a question will pop up in your head. Are you sure you're not as rude as that person? This person should be more like this. You would ask yourself, what about me? A taqwa-inspired person lives a lot within, always looks within, before even looking outwards. A person who is taqwa-inspired remembers Allah constantly. You don't leave Allah at home and then go to work. You take Allah with you when you're going to work. Allah's words, His will, reflect in the way you carry out your job. In the way you shop. You go shopping. If you're taqwa inspired, it will show in the way you do your shopping. Not necessarily what you buy, but how you ask for things. What you say when somebody offers to buy something, to sell something to you. What you do when the deal doesn't go well. You remember Allah at all times. For a taqwa-inspired person, the world is not enough. The world is too little to satisfy a taqwa-inspired person. Because Allah describes those who do not expect the meeting with Him and are satisfied with the life of this world and they feel secure in it. A taqwa-inspired person is not satisfied with what the world has to offer. A taqwa-inspired person will use what the world has to offer but wants far more than what the world has. So a taqwa-inspired person is hungry. Is a hungry person, hungry for more, hungry for real things. Now we talk about amal and iman. Amal, deeds. Iman, faith. Because building a relationship with Allah, there are two things that make up the bridge between you and Allah. It's not just faith, it's not just taqwa, it's iman as well as action. Iman and amal are always together. They go together. Anytime Allah talks about inna alladhina amanu, almost always it's followed by wa amilu salihah. Almost every time. There are few instances where Allah will talk about alladhina amanu, those who believe, that He would not say and do good deeds. The two usually go together. Because you cannot believe in something and not live by it. Then is that belief real? Everybody believes in something. And what someone believes in may be very different from what you profess to believe in. Your lips may say one thing, your actions will be screaming something else. If we look at some of the verses of the Qur'an, for instance, to talk about how amal and iman always go together, we look at some verses from Salatu al-Insan, where Allah describes the people who will drink from a fountain in paradise as those people who, He describes them as people who fulfill their promises, who fear the day when they will meet with Him, the day when evil flies far. And because of that consciousness, they feed the poor. And they also say to themselves, I'm not feeding this person because I want this person to thank me or be grateful to me or reward me. It's because of Allah, out of love for Him. In Surah Al-Layl, He talks about the same thing. People who, to purify themselves, they give. They perform salah. And they also say, I'm not expecting a reward from anybody. Remember what we said, for the person who is taqwa-inspired, the world is not enough. Your thank you cannot satisfy them. They want Allah's own reward. And also Surah Al-Ma'un, where Allah asks, have you seen the person who denies the last day? And He describes this person, not based on the person's thoughts, but based on the person's actions. That this is the person who will not urge the feeding of the needy. The person who denies the last day will not do good deeds. In many other places, He describes people who believe by their deeds. That's why we say iman and amal always go together. If you think of the human body, again, we'll use the example of a computer. You want to know what kind of program is running it. See what's the function, what does it do, what can it do. The function always tells you what the program is, what has been put into it. Sometimes someone gets a pirated copy of a particular program, installs it on the system. It's when it starts to misbehave, you realize this program was faulty to start with. So for a human being, your amal is like the function, iman, the program. Belief in Allah and the meeting. Many times in Hadith, the Prophet will talk about he who believes in the last day should. He doesn't say should believe. You already say you believe. Okay, get to work with it. Should say what is good or keep quiet. Should be good to his neighbor. Should be kind to travelers. Always preceding these statements with, if you believe in Allah, you believe you will meet Him, then you will do these things. Because like that boy with the seed, you have to go back and show what you've done. A Muslim is he from whose tongue and hands other Muslims are safe. While a faithful believer, a mu'min, is he in whom humankind have an asylum for their blood and their wealth. If someone were to say who is a Muslim, we would say Muslim is someone that takes the shahada, that has taken the shahada. Yet Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam tells us it's more than that. He defines in this hadith a Muslim based on a Muslim's behavior towards other Muslims. And a believer, he defines him on the basis of how he treats humanity as a whole. Whenever you see Muslim and Mu'min put side by side, Allah or the Prophet are usually trying to say something. When you're a Muslim, you're at level 1. When you're a Mu'min, it's a higher level. Once these two are juxtaposed, it's saying there's a difference. A Muslim, in this case, is not a Mu'min. A Mu'min is a Muslim, just someone who has taken it a step further. Therefore, you look at this hadith again. It says a Muslim, you are concerned about the Muslims, which is good. But if you want to take your faith deeper, you start getting concerned about what happens to everybody around you, irrespective of their faith or their belief. Proximity to Allah is attained when we go closer to people. Yesterday, we said if you are seeking happiness, enduring happiness, one of the ways to do that is to serve others. And there's a hadith al-Qudsi, where Allah was talking about, I would say, on the Day of Judgment, he would say to one of his servants, I was ill, you didn't visit me. Or I was hungry, you didn't give me anything to eat, you didn't feed me. And that Allah's servant will ask, but my Lord, you are the Lord of all the worlds. How can you be ill? How can I visit you? And he would say, such and such my servant was ill. You didn't go to visit him. Don't you know if you had gone to visit him, you would have found me there? Proximity to Allah is attained when we try to serve others. Our strides in our efforts to get closer to Allah, to purify ourselves, to build a relationship with Him, should go beyond our prayer mat. Because you will check hadith, you will find so many instances when Allah talks about improving the heart, the Prophet talks about improving the soul, the spirit, and Quranic verses, and the emphasis is on action a lot. Action based on Iman, based on faith, based on taqwa. So we should go beyond the prayer mat. In Surah Al-Ma'un, as Allah describes this person who denies the last day, He then also curses the worshipper. That verse was used in a lot of cases to try and deceive Muslims into believe something is wrong with Islam itself, with Salah. Because Allah says, and woe unto the worshipper, وَوَيْلُ لِلْمُصَلِّينَ. But He doesn't stop there. He says, woe unto the worshipper who is heedless of his prayer. He's praying, but he's not really praying. His body is going through the motion, but his heart is not in it. And only prays to be seen of men. Only performs salah, so people will say you are performing salah. Allah says such a person has a big problem. And this person, in addition, on top of all that, does not perform little acts of kindness. A little kindness would not even show to people. So our efforts to be good Muslims, to be strong, to have a sound heart, should go beyond what we do on the prayer mat. We can start there. It's a good place to start. It's a great place to start with salah. But it has to evolve and translate into every other action we do. Ibadah, when we say ibadah, service, serving Allah, worship, we should always remember it's more than just acts of devotion to Allah. Devotion to Allah, devotion to people. Service to Allah, service to people. The two cannot be separated. Shahada beyond words. Always remember, your shahada should go beyond words. We should be a living testimony. Because Allah talks about it in Surah Al-Baqarah, about how He has raised us as witnesses to mankind, just as Rasul was made a witness to us. Witness, a living testimony of who Allah is, who Allah wants us to be. So as that little boy said, we need to start thinking consciously about Allah's attributes. Many times we do adhkar with the attributes of Allah. Ya Salam, Ya Rahman, Ya Mu'min, Ya Soul, and this, Ya that, Ya this. Each time you call the name of Allah, you ask yourself, what about me? Is this an attribute I can show? There are some attributes of Allah that are peculiar to Him. Human beings cannot be those things. Like an originator. However, if you extend the meaning a little bit, you can also be an originator. You can be original in how you do things, in your thoughts, in your inventions. To that extent, you can even become an originator. Not in the pure sense like Allah. But all the other basic qualities, there are many that we can repeat. Many of us have names tied to the names of Allah, particularly Muslim men. Abdul Rahman, Abdul Malik, Abdul Khalik. There was a boy who was given a lot of trouble in school. He would do things we couldn't understand. He would hit someone because he feels like it. Big kind of husky boy, strong boy. He would go and vandalize light switches because he wanted to. And when we would ask, why did you do this? He would say, I don't know. It was getting to the point where we kept thinking we would eventually have to ask his parents to withdraw him from boarding house. Because you can't keep doing these things. You don't even know why you do them and you can't help yourself. He was about 13 or 14 at the time. Until the day someone sat with him and had a talk with him and said, do you even know the meaning of your name? He said, yes. What does it mean? He said, servant of the generous one, Abdul Karim. And the person said, can you, try and live up to your name? Even if you don't know why you do what you do, can you try and live up to your name? Because hitting people isn't generous. Destroying light switches is not generous. He said yes, and that was the day he stopped all his trouble. He still could not, I'm sure, explain why he used to do all those ungenerous things, but focusing on his name, the attribute of Allah, and trying to be a vicegerent was what helped him. It gave him a goal, something to work towards. And working towards that goal naturally took him away from wherever he was headed before. 24-karat character. Yeah, 24-karat gold. You can also talk about 24-karat character. Can gold go beyond 24 carats? Is there? I'm not challenging you. I really want to know, like yesterday you taught me something about upgrading batteries. Gold, can it go beyond 24 carats? A brother is nodding. Are you nodding because you are thinking? Okay, now he's shaking his head. Okay. So we'll remain with 24-karat character. If there's anything beyond that, fine, we'll take it too. Which person would we say has or had 24-karat character? Who? The Prophet? We agree? Yeah. So he's our best example. He's the best role model ever, and Allah says so in the Qur'an. So we know it's true. What is character? Let's interact a little bit. What is character?
Noble.
What is?
Noble.
Noble character? Okay. But when you want to define character as a whole, what would you define character as? Virtues. What else? Civility in behavior. Personality. Character and personality, are they the same or they are similar? Similar. Okay, I agree. Personality sometimes would point to character. What else about character? How would you define character? Character is what? Attitude. Behavior. Someone said character is what you do repeatedly. You keep doing something, you become that thing. You keep doing something, you become it. A person keeps telling lies, becomes a liar. A person keeps telling the truth, becomes a truthful person. Character is not just our attitude or behavior towards people, but also towards animals, towards all of creation, towards everything around us. This is just a quick way of saying, let's also join as much as possible anything that will help us conserve our resources. That's part of our character. We are vicegerents of Allah, not just with regard to people, but with regard to animals, to creation, to the universe in which we exist. Remember the well-known story of the woman and her cat? The woman who was a righteous person, but the main trouble she had on the day of judgment, or would have, would be the fact that she locked her cat up in a room, would not let it go out to hunt, and would not feed it. She starved her cat. And it was that starving of an animal, a small animal like a cat, that became her albatross, her rock on the day of judgment. That was what brought her down. For another woman, a prostitute, what became her saving virtue on the day of judgment was the fact that one day she saw a thirsty dog, and she went into a well or put her shoe down in the well, depending on which version one is reading, and she gave the dog water to drink. A thirsty dog. So when we say character, let's not restrict ourselves to our treatment of people. Let's also remember our treatment of animals. This for those people that kick dogs when they see them and try and scare cats when they see them, or start shooting birds for no reason. All right, exercise, quick exercise. Form groups of 2 or 3, depending on what's convenient for you. And just discuss which part of your character would you say needs polishing? The way you polish brass and gold. When it starts looking faded and old, which part of your character would you say needs polishing? If you'd rather not tell somebody about it, then do a solo exercise. We'll do it for 2 minutes. I don't have a clock here. Is there someone that could help? Just let us know when 2 minutes have expired. Which part of your character would you say needs polishing? We can start now. If anybody is dozing off behind you, just nudge her a bit, nudge him a bit. Say, let's talk, let's talk. Remember what they told us about this ego thing? If you say no part of your character needs polishing, then that itself needs polishing. Have 2 minutes gone by? Yes, okay. All right. What we did in the first leg was to try and identify. Talk about. Now in the second leg, I would like anybody, please. There's wisdom. What you call wisdom of the crowds. You get a large group of people together. They are far more intelligent, much smarter, wiser than one expert. And I'm not even an expert, so we won't even talk about me. So we'll ask, can anybody just suggest what they think would help people polish their character in general terms? You must have read something or even tried something out that, okay, this helped me improve myself in some way or the other. Any suggestions? If you'd rather not start talking on the mic, just speak out. If I hear what you're saying, then I'll rebroadcast it. Inshallah.
I think the person has to identify the character that needs polishing.
Okay, first, identify what needs polishing, which I think almost everybody here did a short while ago. Number 1, anything else, please? Just throw it out. Let's not even be formal about it. Just if you hear somebody else already speaking, then hold on. Self-coaching. Coach yourself. How could you do that? How does one do that? By becoming more aware within yourself of what you need to do. Okay. How else? Always reflect every night. Someone is suggesting reflect every night on yourself. What have I done wrong? What have I done right? What do I need to do differently? Okay, identify it, be aware, reflect upon it.
Ask for help.
Ask for help. Don't do it alone, ask for help. Who would we ask for help? Who could we ask for help?
Friends, families.
Okay, ask friends, have family members to assist you. Ask your enemies to help you. All right, do you want to explain further, sister?
Not that I have enemies.
Okay.
But to put the word enemy on its own, I think that's quite good. I mean, like, somebody may not like you so much. So that somebody be more honest and blunt.
Okay. A person who doesn't like you very much will be more willing to be very blunt and honest because they don't care about your feelings. So they'll tell you exactly what they think about you. Whereas a friend would be trying to pad the truth a little bit. Okay, so that bluntness would be helpful. Yes.
I think the best is to ask our spouse about the character that we need polishing.
Dua?
Our
Oh,
spouse.
to ask your spouse. Yes, someone said ask your spouse about what needs polishing. Because the spouse occupies that enviable place of someone who loves you, inshallah, but can also afford to be blunt with you. Because if you are the one saying, is there any part of my character that needs improvement? Your spouse will be only too happy to tell you, because that means they'll be living with someone who has just gotten better. And they may have always thought about it, but just didn't know how to say it. And now you open the door wide. Tell me. It's like, oh, alhamdulillah. Now I can tell you. So ask your spouse. Think about it. Reflect on it constantly, identify it, ask friends to help and family members, ask even enemies or people who don't like you that much, ask your spouse. Anything else?
Be open-minded.
Be open-minded. To accept. Once you start asking about yourself, tell me about myself, be ready to hear anything. Don't blame others. Great. Take responsibility for yourself. Don't blame others. Don't say, could you tell me an area of my character that needs polishing? And the person says, well, sometimes you get upset when I correct you. Say, yeah, you don't correct me properly. If you did it properly, then I wouldn't get upset. You asked for it, right? Okay, anything else? Make dua. Lower your ego. Put it to sleep. Knock it out. What? Mingle with positive people. All right, the optimism would rub off, inshallah. Yes?
Don't get too personal.
Okay.
Because people might not like your character doesn't mean they don't like you.
Great. Don't take it personal. The fact that somebody doesn't like your character doesn't mean the person doesn't like you. For the person to even tell you, take it that the person does like you. That's why the person can't keep quiet and watch you just keep doing this thing the wrong way. All right, now Nagode. That is Hausa for terima kasih. The three men trapped in the cave. A story to emphasize the importance of serving others. Very well-known story, so I'll try and summarize. About the three people who were trapped in a cave, a rock had fallen over the mouth of the cave and they couldn't get out. How many of us know that story? Let me just see hands up to know how much I should say. Okay, so I'll start it from the beginning. It seems about half the number of people know it, half don't. Three people went traveling one day. They entered a cave when it was nightfall, and by chance, a stone, a large rock, rolled over the mouth of the cave, trapping them inside. They couldn't get out. So when they were talking amongst themselves about what to do, they then said, you know, you have to ask Allah to help you. Let's ask Allah for help. Perhaps there's something that one of us might have done, which would so impress Allah, Allah would just, you know, perform this miracle and make the rock leave the mouth of the cave. So the first person, now I can't remember in which order, I'll say it as I recall. One person said that I'm someone who works in the fields. Whenever I go back home, I give my parents milk. That is usually the supper. And I would never give my children and my wife milk to drink before I give my parents. My parents are old. I care for them that much. There was a particular day I got to my parents' house and they were already asleep because I stayed out late. I sat down waiting for them to wake up with a bowl of milk in my hand. I didn't want to go and give my wife and children the milk because I hadn't given my parents first. I waited, they slept, they kept sleeping, and that was how I waited until dawn. And he said, oh Allah, if I did it for your sake, please open this cave. And the rock shifted a bit, but there still wasn't enough space for them to get out. So a second person had a go. This man said he had a cousin that he was really attached to. So attached to her that he began to have sexual desire for her. So he tried to sleep with her. She turned him down. She refused. Then a year of famine hit them. She had nothing, so she came to him for help, something to feed with. And he told her he would give her 120 dinars, silver or was it gold pieces, if she would allow him sleep with her. Because of her situation, her dire need to feed herself, she agreed, but she told him, this is wrong. If we are not married, this is wrong. And that was what made him pause and think about what he was going to do again. Then he told her to go, and she should go with the gold pieces. And he said, oh Allah, if I refrained from carrying out that act for your sake, please open the cave. And the rock shifted a little bit, but there was still not enough space for them to get out. So the third person tried. Subhanallah, the third person story has flown out of my head. What was the third one? Help. Yes, thank you, wisdom of the crowd. The third person was someone who used to keep a lot of animals. No, he had workers for him, sorry. He didn't used to keep animals, he had workers for him. Now, when they finished their work, he paid them, except for one person who left before he got paid. So he took that person's money. He invested it in buying livestock. And he reared the livestock. When this person came back after a long time had passed, the person said, I want my money. And he said, there's your money. And showed him the goats, the chickens, the sheep. Said, that's your money. And, you know, the question, according to the way the story is narrated, was the person said, oh, servant of Allah, are you mocking me? And he said, no, I'm not mocking you. It's all yours. And he said this person took everything, right down to the last chicken, and didn't leave anything behind. And he said, oh, Allah, if I did that for your sake, please open the cave. And that was how the rock shifted enough for all three people to get out. You think about what each person did. First of all, two people seemed like really good people. The second one, the one who wanted to sleep with his cousin, sounded like a not so good person. That's why you made the point. It's not about perfection, it's about effort. The other thing about the story, you look at each person, what were they trading for their rescue? It wasn't, oh Allah, you know I do tahajjud. Oh Allah, you know how many times I have prayed and prayed. You know I do long rak'ah when I pray. It wasn't, oh Allah, remember that day I did adhkar and did adhkar until my throat was dry. No, it was about I served somebody else. Fi sabilillah, for your sake. Before we do an exercise, we'll talk about footsteps in paradise. Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam once said to Bilal, that I heard your footsteps in paradise. Is there something you do that gives you hope? You actually have hope because I do this thing, fi sabilillah. And that was when he then mentioned something that he usually does, which I think was every time he performs ablution, he tries to perform 2 rak'ah nafila with it. I tell this hadith because I want us to ask ourselves, is there anything or anyone even that has helped us build a relationship with Allah? Is there anyone or anything that has helped us build a relationship with Allah? One, identify that thing or that person. Then make a personal commitment. You will stay close to that person or you will keep doing that thing. Something that makes you more conscious of Allah, that reminds you of Him. Whatever that thing may be or whoever that person may be. Then secondly, what would you like to do in order to have greater hope in the hereafter? Because everybody has hope in something. Those people in the cave, their service of people was what they were hopeful of. What would you like to do in order to have greater hope in the hereafter? Again, 2 minutes. One, identify what's helping you or has helped you get closer to Allah. Could be a person, could be an action. Then also ask yourself, what would I like to do to give me greater hope in Allah? Or is there something you are already doing and you think, I should do this well? Fi sabilillah. Again, 2 minutes, inshallah. This is personal. You may discuss if it will help you think better. But it's worth thinking about. 2 minutes. Okay, inshallah, we will continue. This is just to help us start thinking. We can keep thinking about it and being more conscious of it. I'd like to tell us another story. I seem to keep telling stories about kings. It's now I just realized it. MashaAllah. This is a story titled The 5-Year King. In one kingdom far, far away, long, long time ago, there was a king who, like the other king, was looking for a successor. He was on his deathbed. So he had come up with this fantastic idea that the person who would be king after him would rule for just 5 years. After 5 years, the person would go and live on this island you see there in the picture. Then they would pick a new king. Then he died, and the kingmakers decided to find a king. So all the young men were jostling for the position. All the young men wanted to be king. Me, I'm better than him. Me, pick me. Finally, one young man was picked. They crowned him king in the morning. By afternoon, all the singers in the kingdom were invited to the palace. And the young man threw a party. He called it the crowning party. The party to celebrate my being king. And they partied all afternoon, all evening, all night. And they partied some more the following day and the day after that. Every day there was a new party. When he was tired of parties, he moved on to something else. In this way, he lived one day after the other until 5 years went by. On the last day of the 5th year, he said, yes, now it's time to go to the island. Once again, the kingmakers organized. They got him a boat, put him on the boat. They rowed over to the island. When they landed on the beach, he said, by the way, what am I supposed to be doing here? They said, we don't know. That's what the law says. We bring you here. And he said, oh, really? They said, yes. So they dropped him off. And he looked around this whole island. He was going to rule the island, he said. They started to row away. When they looked back, they saw the man walking towards the vegetation. As they rode further away, the next thing they heard, ah! 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 Then there was silence. They looked at one another like, what was that? And they went on. When they got back to the city, they looked for a new king. Once again, young men. Me, pick me, because they had seen what fun the first person had. So they wanted to have the same kind of fun. They picked someone else. He again had a blast, a 5-year non-stop party. He enjoyed himself. Day to go to the island. He said, what's next? They said, we don't know. The law says we take you there, you put you there. He said, okay. And they took him there. They dropped him off. And as they were rowing away, once again, they heard these deathly screams. And after the screams, silence. And they looked at one another. They went back to the city. Who wants to be king? The number of contenders had reduced because the people now started remembering the first king. They never heard from him again. But there were still people who wanted to be king. They picked someone. Same thing happened. By this time, nobody wanted to be king. Because they said these people have a blast for 5 years and you don't ever hear from them again. We are not so sure we want that. But one man said, I want to be king. And people said, don't do it. You will never come back. He said, I want to be king. They made him a king. Many of the party goers, the night clubbers, were waiting for the party to begin. No party. Instead, there were meetings in the palace. Meetings of the travelers in the kingdom, those who loved to go far. Meetings of hunters, meetings of farmers, meetings of gardeners, meetings of royal builders. Like, wouldn't this guy have fun? Meanwhile, he would still eat, he would still do the regular stuff, but there were meetings. And then people kept going to that island. One group would go and come back. Very secretive. What on earth is going on? After 5 years of living a normal, ordinary life, eating, sleeping like anybody else, they put this young man on a boat, said, it's time to go to the island. He said, sure, no problem. And they said, won't you ask any questions like those before you? He said, no. I already know what I need to know. When they got there, they were amazed because the island seemed transformed. There was still vegetation, but it wasn't as thick as before. And they said, this doesn't look like the same island as before. And he said, it's not. They dropped him off, and he said, by the way, when you get back, bring my family with me. They said, we'd like to see the island. He said, sure. And they got to the island. They found this was a little city. Many trees gone, some remaining, but there were gardens, there were farms. There was a mansion. 5 years the young man had been planning for this very day. His family came to live with him, and when other islanders said, we would like to come too, he said, yes, but you'll have to pay toll gate fee, you'll have to pay entrance fee, and so he made a nice living. I know I've tweaked the story a little bit. That's not the way I read it or the way it was told to me. But that's what we call invention, right? Lesson in the story. It's very obvious, isn't it? It's obvious. Ko? Right? That's ko is Hausa for right. It's obvious, right? Not with me, because you are going to talk about it. What do we think the story is telling us? Or what are we sure? What does the story say to us? Preparation. There's the hereafter, planning for it. Don't party for 5 years. Eat, drink, enjoy life, but don't party it all away. Party later. Some of us spend our whole lives wanting to party. We forget that it's a journey. Sorry? Have a clear vision, yes. See it happening, make it happen. Remember sound hearts? We should all try to go back to Allah with our hearts in the right place. In order to have a sound heart, we have to build our immunity. Our spiritual immune system has to be strong. Because it's by the nature of human beings that our hearts will get diseased. If you've ever tried to fix something in you, a part of your character, you would realize that you'll fix it, something else will go broke, will go wrong. Then you will tackle that one. Then something else will also become a problem. Just as the body from time to time gets ill, so does the heart. But if the body's immune system is strong, then illnesses will not do as much damage to you as they would if your immune system were weak. So also, if the spiritual immune system is strong, then you won't have faced the same spiritual issues, character and personality issues as other people would. You would suffer from the same heart disease. You would feel envy. From time to time, you would have flashes or long spells of envy. From time to time, you would find your temper would be like a tornado, just raging. And occasionally, you would also feel sad, depressed. Sometimes your faith will fail. It won't be as strong as you imagined it was. It happens to everybody. Everybody. Even prophets went through the same thing. What is important is making sure the spiritual immune system is so strong that things may touch you, but they don't stay with you. To always be sensitive to what is right and what is wrong. We talked about that before. That sensitivity is important. That's where you know your immune system is strong, it's working. It's like when you eat something that's not good for you, or some kind of bacteria gets into your bloodstream. If your immune system is strong, immediately your white blood cells swing into action. They try and deal with it, kill it before it does any damage. If the immune system is weak, that thing would keep roaming around before your body would even notice something is wrong. Similarly, if you're spiritually strong, once something is wrong, you start to feel wrong. It doesn't take long for you to feel wrong. It's like the boy I talked about yesterday. He noticed when his own heart began to fail. He noticed because he was sensitive to it. Someone else would not notice. The person would have even started doing drugs before he would be like, how did I even get here? That sensitivity is important. And one of the best ways to build the immune system is from the Qur'an. Because remember Allah said, if there comes guidance from me and you follow it, it will be fine. Shaitan will try, but you do not lose faith. Don't lose your way. Follow the guidance. There has come a direction from your Lord and a healing for what is in your hearts. You can't get at the medicine unless you actually take it in. So unless one starts fostering a habit of reading the Qur'an, reflecting upon it, one cannot really build your immune system, your spiritual immune system. Being intelligent is not enough. Intellect is great. But as we said yesterday, revelation and reason go together. Sometimes reason could actually lead you astray. Reason alone. The Quran, Allah says, He revealed it in Arabic so it would be understood by those who were the first to receive it. They were Arab-speaking people. The Prophet was an Arab. He needed to understand what he was being told. His people were Arabs. They needed to understand what they were being told. Then it's been translated into other languages. So it's now left to us to look for the Quran translated into a language we understand, and from there start to comprehend it. If you can, you have the interest, the capability, the time, learn Arabic by all means. It's still the best way, but if one cannot, then at least read it in a language which you understand. One thing that could be helpful is get as many translations in Malay, if that's your first language, as possible. Because one person will translate a word this way, another person another way. By the time you read the 3 different translations, you then get a sense of what the actual Arabic word connotes, all the different ways of comprehending that word. The Quran was meant to be understood, not meant to just be chanted. I'm not against chanting it. I enjoy reciting the Quran, but recite it, understand it. It's a reminder. You cannot be reminded by what you don't understand. You can't be guided by what you don't understand. If you don't understand road signs, how are they helpful? A road sign is useless if you don't know what the sign means. Sometimes you are working on your laptop and something pops up and there's an icon. If you don't know what the icon means, you won't even know what to do. You may hit the thing that will make you delete a document where what you wanted to do was save it. And that's when you see somebody start crying and having a mad scrap because they've been working on the document for the past 4 hours. Many times when someone is just learning to use the computer, one useful thing they need to know how to do is undo. They need to remember where that icon is and go click the icon. So when you make an error, you can fix it. If you don't even know where to find the icon, you don't know what the icon means, then how on earth can you fix something? Yesterday, I was working on the laptop. I wanted to undo something I had done. I just swung the cursor in one direction. I clicked. The thing didn't come back. I clicked again, didn't come back. Clicked again. That's when I said, wait, where is the cursor? What am I clicking on? I was clicking on redo. So if something is to guide you, you need to understand what's guiding you. The Quran has transformational power. For someone whose mind is open and is ready to read it, it transforms. It transformed Umar, radiallahu anhu. I know it's transformed me many times when I needed some form of transformation. And I know many of you have felt the same way. There were times you needed something to push you in the right direction. And all it took was just getting the right verse of the Quran, or to read it for a while. It transforms. We should never break off from it. Keep reading it, keep reflecting on it, and keep browsing it. I'm going to emphasize browsing. I call browsing the Quran what you do when you don't really even know what you want to read. It's not as though you saw a verse somewhere, you want to go look it up. No, you just open it and you just keep flicking. Sometimes you'll stumble on a verse that will be like, wow, I didn't know that. This was the advice a friend gave me many years ago. When I was struggling to try and be a better Muslim, and I kept feeling the weight of being very different from everybody else and wanting to hide my Islam a little bit. And she lent me her copy of the Quran. It was English, the English translation. She said, just browse through. You don't have to know what you're looking for. Just keep reading. You'll find something. And I did. I found many things, discovered things people never told me about Islam. That was when I actually began to understand that Islam is beautiful, it's sensible, it makes absolute sense. Another thing about the Quran that's transformational is one of the things people sometimes say about the Quran. You read it, you read authority speaking. A friend once was going through the Quran and there was a place she read, she was like, God, this is when you know this is God speaking. It's a place where he was talking about some people that somebody is told about Islam, shown the signs, and the person frowns, he thinks about it, should he follow, he turns away. And Allah then says, leave him alone. Leave me alone with him who I created alone. Leave me with him. You know when maybe somebody is flexing his muscles and he's saying, I'll deal with you, I'll deal with you. Somebody walks and says, all of you go out, leave me with him. That's authority. So that's another beautiful thing about Quran. It convinces you sometimes this is Allah talking. There's a story about the man, the boy, and the basket. This is for those who say, yeah, I can't read too well. Still recite. Recite. Because reciting reminds you Allah sent a message. And these words I'm repeating, these are the exact words he sent Angel Jibril that the Prophet ﷺ repeated and that he also repeated to his messengers. It makes you feel like you are one link in a chain of transmission. You are carrying the message, you are keeping it alive. Even if you don't understand at that time what you are reciting, eventually you will. Or you will recite it to someone else who will understand. There was a man who, it was said, loved reciting the Quran, though he didn't understand a word of what he was saying, but he would recite it constantly, and his son asked him, why do you keep reciting this thing? You don't understand it. He didn't answer at the time, but then he told the boy to go fetch a basket where they usually keep coal, told him to turn all the coal out, take that basket, go to the river, fetch me water. With the basket? He said, yes. But it's not good. Just go, do it. Go. The boy went. He filled the basket with water, but he didn't have to take too many steps before all the water ran out. Came back, I told you it won't work. He said, keep trying. So the boy went back, tried and tried, finally gave up. That it's not going to work. It doesn't make sense. You can't fetch water in a basket. The man said, that's true. But look at the basket. Is it still as black as it was when you took it there? The boy said, no. He said, yes, the basket can't hold the water, but each time the water runs through, it takes some of the dirt with it. So even when one does not have the opportunity to understand something, recite it. Let the recitation of it be a reminder to you that I don't understand, I need to go find out what this means. Another tip on the Quran, listen to some reciters. Some are good reciters, they are great with tajweed and all that, but there are some reciters that I said when they recite, you feel they're reciting from their hearts. Sudais is one of them, Abdurrahman Sudais. It's listening to his recitation that sometimes pushed me to go and find the Quran and find that place he just recited and find out what it means. Where's the translation? I need to know. Because the way he recited, to get the sense that that place was important, I need to go find out what was that. And when you go and check, you actually find there was something. It was a powerful place that moved him so much, it came through in his voice. I remember once listening to a student at school recite. It was a recitation competition. Some came, they recited perfectly, technically perfect. This girl's recitation was different because you sensed she knew what she was reciting. And so she wasn't just reciting, she was talking to herself. And later I had to ask, do you understand that place you just recited? She said, yes, I know the meaning. And that again was a push for me that I'd better know what I'm reciting. Because it then reminds you of what Allah actually wants you to remember. It's a reminder, it's a guide, it's a mercy. Now we'll talk about things to do to build the spiritual immune system. We'll start, I've been told I have less than 15 minutes, but inshallah after the break we will continue, that's when we'll conclude. So whoever is the timekeeper, don't be afraid to show me 5 minutes more, I won't run because I know I have more time, inshallah. Let's start with surrounding yourself. The Quran is your base. You start from there. Surround yourself. You know this surround system, how you want the music blasting from all directions. Well, not you, some people. Similarly, surround yourself with the right kind of people so that whatever they say is the right kind of thing. It's all around you. You hear it from everywhere. The Montessori system of education has one policy. From the little I read about it, something struck me. Their policy is, when you want a child to learn a language from birth, you don't teach the child one word at a time. You don't teach this child the rules of grammar, sentence construction. You surround this child with a language. That's how children learn language. That's how they learn Malay, because at home they are surrounded by Malay. In school they are surrounded by it. You ask them technical questions about rules of grammar, they may not be able to understand, but they'll speak perfect Malay because they are surrounded by it. Similarly, to grow spiritually, surround yourself with the people who are also spiritually minded. Ali radiallahu anhu was once said to have been criticized by someone when he was the caliph, that is, during your reign you are having all these problems. All problems seem to come during your tenure as a caliph. When we had the other caliphs, we didn't have these problems. Ali said, yes, that's true. When Abu Bakr was the caliph, when Umar was the caliph, he had Abu Bakr, he had Uthman, he had me. I think I've gotten their names mixed up, but you know what I mean. And he said each person had people surrounding him. He said, now I'm here, they are all dead, they are gone. And I'm surrounded by people like you. In other words, I'm surrounded by people who will only criticize, they won't help. Surround yourself with people who will help you. Even when they criticize you, their criticism will be good for you. Think about your friends. Who do you surround yourself with right now? Who? When you leave this gathering and you want to go out and have a nice, quiet time with friends, who are the people that surround you? In school, at work, who are those people you are closer to? Who surrounds you? What sound is coming out from them? What emotions are spilling over from them? Surround yourself with the right kind of crowd. Attend gatherings that will build your awareness, such as this one, and any other that's out there. There are some people who just love going to Islamic gatherings because they keep saying, you know, I'll go there. If I hear anything good, I'll take it. If I hear anything that is not good, I'll leave it behind for the people. But I'll go with what's good for me. That's another way of surrounding yourself. Create your context. We talked about it before. Create your context, influence your context. Be an active force. If you are passive, you are more easily influenced. If you are active, then you are the more prominent, you are the more salient part of that context. Active in the sense that you are aware of what you're doing, you say what needs to be said, you turn away from what needs to be turned away from. You don't hide yourself or conceal your thoughts or your beliefs or your opinion. It doesn't mean being obnoxious. It just means being clear, being honest about who you are. Cooperate with one another in righteousness and piety. That's Allah's own advice to us. Let there arise out of you a band of people inviting to all that is good, enjoining and forbidding what is wrong. In another verse, he says, race with one another towards forgiveness, and for a paradise that is as wide as the heavens and the earth. Race with one another. So after that, there is an exercise, and we'll probably break up this aspect of this session on that note. Who can you cooperate with in an area that you are passionate about? We are combining two things, cooperation and passion. Yesterday we talked about doing something you really love. You love doing this. It puts that fire in your heart that keeps you going. It recharges your happiness battery. So think about an area you are passionate about. Education, setting up or working in a soup kitchen, sponsoring people, sponsoring programs, doing dawah online, environment, or social justice, or civil consciousness. The list is endless. You ask yourself, what are you passionate about? Then who can you cooperate with? Is there any way you can contribute? Yourself, your time, your money, your expertise, your knowledge, or just your good cheer, your great humor? Who can you cooperate with? This hall is full of people right now. Not totally full. But it's full of people who each have something they would love to do. Maybe you dreamt about it, you wanted to, you just never had the time. You didn't know how. But right now you know you are passionate and you are ready to band with someone, to race with someone in doing that thing. Let's start. Find somebody, start talking. I just did something. Okay. I'll hold it, inshallah. Let's start. Look around you. Or should I help by asking who wants to talk with somebody else about education? Does anybody want to talk with someone else about education? Raise your hand if you do, then people will look, and if they find you, they'll gravitate in your direction. Okay, education, hands up. See the hands up here. Anybody interested in something like soup kitchen? Somebody's hand is up there. He's alone. Okay, soup kitchen charity. Maybe it's the soup kitchen part people don't want to talk about. Charity, helping less privileged. Okay. Your hand is up. Yes, one hand here, one hand there. Online dawah. Sponsoring programs. We are the millionaires. Social justice. Anybody interested in that? Civil consciousness? Anybody? Okay, etc. Anybody? We'll start. When the time is up, the MC will come and say we can now move out. But what I would really encourage is just, he said 5 minutes more. We have 5 minutes. But I really want us to do it actively. Start talking. Is there something you are passionate about? Maybe it's not on this list. Can somebody just call out something she would like to talk about? He would like to talk about? Wow, we are silent today. Research. Research into which area? Research. Somebody here is interested in talking about research. Technology is trying to embarrass me. I refuse to be embarrassed. Okay, where are we? Surround here. Cool. Good. Okay. If you can't find someone, then just talk with the person close to you about what you are passionate about and what you would like to do about it. Okay, we have 5 minutes. I'll go around and just hear. Maybe I'll have ideas I can borrow. It's part of the challenge for some people. How you know something you are passionate about. Think back to when you were a little child. Something you loved doing as a child. Another way to know your passion is what would you do readily even though you were not going to be paid for it. It might actually be something you do right now as a hobby. But that's how you know sometimes when you're passionate about something. Something you did, even as a child. You did it for fun. I know I used to teach for fun. I would teach my little ones, my younger ones, for fun. For a long time, I thought about becoming a teacher. But in my country, you don't tell your parents, I want to go and study education. You only study education if you have nothing else to do. You have no other option. I loved education. I loved writing. I would scribble for hours. The back of my notes, secondary school especially, were always full of scribbles. And then I was very skinny as a child. My father said the only thing the food I used to eat was good for was to give me more energy to talk. So I ended up studying law. But today I work in a school, a secondary school. I teach, I talk, and I write. So I've come full circle in a sense. I'm doing what I'm passionate about. So that's why I said, ask yourself, what did you love doing as a child? Before the world told you what to enjoy, what to do. Before the world, before the voices of the world got so loud you could no longer hear yourself. What did you love doing as a child? Thank you.